Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's been quite a while since I've sat down to film one of these videos, but I asked you guys on Instagram if you'd be interested in seeing some more videos about my experience being an au pair in China, and you guys said yes. And you guys actually sent me quite a few requests, which was really cool. So I figured today's the day. Today's the day I'm going to start filming a video. Also, this is like maybe the 6th time I've tried to film this intro. So bear with me. I'm feeling kind of like awkward today. It's kind of weird to just like sit down in your room in front of a camera, but here we are. So today's video is going to be about what my daily routine was like as an au pair in China, because so I have my list, and I'm just gonna basically go through what my daily routine was. So a usual day for me would start around 9 a.m. I love to sleep, so 9 a.m. could sometimes turn into 9:30 a.m. because I loved sleeping. And at between 9 to 9:30, I'd wake up, check my phone, because usually I'd wake up to messages from my family and friends, because you know there's such a big time difference that when I'm sleeping they were awake and vice versa. So I'd reply to them, just scroll through Instagram for a bit and take my time waking up. And then I'd finally pull myself out of bed and make my way into the kitchen where the dining table was. And the family that I was living with had a lady who was kind of like a cook slash maid, and I called her Ai. Ai is kind of like a term that's like used to call somebody like an aunt or ma'am. It kind of depends on like the relationship you have with them. Ai would always make breakfast, and I would eat by myself because my family was quite a bit more proactive than me, and they would be well into their day by 10 a.m. I think my host dad would leave at like 6 a.m. and my host mom and Ethan 7 a.m. IU would be up like 5 a.m. cooking breakfast and everything for everyone. And Nai, the grandma that lived with me, she kind of just did things on her own time, so usually she'd already eaten by 10 a.m. So I would sit down, and they basically had this little, it kind of looked like an umbrella thing that they'd put over the food so that no like flies, if the window was open, would get into the food and just kind of protect it. So then I just sit down and have breakfast. And usually for breakfast there was like hard-boiled eggs, sweet potatoes. They had these amazing like purple potatoes, like sweet potatoes. They're so good. Like, I don't know if it's literally just because they're purple and it made me excited, but they're the best sweet potatoes I've ever had, and like I can't find them here in America, so I really look forward to having them when I go back to China someday. But every morning there'd definitely be those two things, as well as usually milk, but that would be in the fridge and then I could just grab it out if I wanted it, which is strange because in America I'm lactose intolerant, but in China I wasn't. So I don't know if it's just something about the way we treat our cows here, but yeah, anyway, so I'd have milk usually. And then of course rice, and usually some kind of soup and some kind of vegetable and chicken dish. Also, my host mom had like bought me bread and like jam because she liked to remind me of like breakfast at home. So sometimes I'd have that as well. And yeah, it was really nice to wake up every morning and have like a meal just waiting for you, that I could eat at my leisure. And then usually when I finished eating, I would like clean everything up because I was usually the last one to eat. So I'd usually finish breakfast probably by 10:30, and then I'd like make my way into my room and just get dressed and figure out what I was gonna do for that day. But pretty much every day I did the same thing because I was doing school like online while I was there, so I really had to like keep up on my schoolwork. I couldn't just like go gallivanting around the city all day, even though I would have like loved to. So usually I would go to Starbucks or a Costa Coffee. I think it's Costa Coffee. And I just sit and I do homework for quite a few hours. So anywhere from like 11 a.m. to sometimes 3 p.m. but usually I'd stop around 2 p.m. and like go do something else before with my day, but not always. So yeah, I'd sit and I'd have my coffee and I'd listen to music and I'd do my homework, and then when I finished doing my homework I would, because these coffee places, by the way, were like within 5 minutes walking from my house. Like the Starbucks was actually in the same building that I lived in. It was just like downstairs on the first floor. So when I finished studying, I'd usually go back up to my room and put my things away, and then either just chill at home until the boy came home at 4, or go out to Coco Park, which was this huge shopping mall that was like right next to where I lived, also just like 5 minutes away. That's where actually Costa Coffee was. One thing that Ayi and I worked out was like on the on our refrigerator we had a sign that said like eating outside or eating at home, like in English and Chinese, so that way she would know every day if she needed to make lunch for me or if I was gonna eat like outside. So pretty much every day I would eat outside, just because I don't know, I felt kind of a little bit strange to like ask somebody to cook for me every time, especially because it was like then I had to like coordinate with her what time I was gonna be home, and sometimes like my homework would take me longer than I thought, and it's like kind of hard to stop in the middle for me. Also, there was like tons and tons and tons and tons of cool places that I wanted to eat out, because I mean it's China and like I don't have those at home. So I pretty much would just eat out like every lunch. But yeah, it kind of got expensive, but like I don't regret it because it was like some of the best food I've ever had. But sometimes I did come home and it was nice to eat with, it would be me and Ayi and sometimes Nine, like the grandma, and we just sit together and chat and eat. If I didn't go home for lunch, then I usually would just go for a walk. There's a Shenzhen Bay Park, which was only a few like metro stops away from where I was living. So I used to like to go there and just take a walk or sit by the bay and just relax and chill, sometimes bring a book and just like enjoy my free time. Or sometimes I would also like meet with a friend and like get a snack or go for tea or something if they were available, but usually we were all pretty busy. So also with my Chinese friends were usually working in the day or like going to school, and then my AuPair friends were also like AuPairs, so they were pretty busy too. And I actually had a pretty unusual schedule that I had so much free time because a lot of the AuPairs had younger kids, so they were basically like nannies, so full-time responsible for taking care of their kids. But for me it kind of worked out that Ethan would go to school for like 8 hours a day and I'd have that time to myself to just like do homework and, you know, have time to myself, which was super nice. But anyway, yeah, so every day though I would make sure that I was home by 3 o'clock because Ethan always came home around 4. So I just would come home and plan out like a schedule of what we were gonna do that day in our study session. And I actually made a schedule of what it looks like that we would do. So I'll read it to you. But this is kind of what a standard schedule would look like. I'd always draw him like a little picture at the top. This is supposed to be sushi. And then we would just follow the schedule. So this was actually something I did per his request because Ethan really liked schedules because it kept him on track and helped him to know like what we were gonna do that day. But I remember when he asked me like, oh, he like asked me if he could teach me how to make his schedule. So the schedule is made by, at the time, a 7-year-old boy and how he wanted to schedule his life, which I thought was like so cute of him. But so I'd always write like the date and then welcome home Ethan, and he'd have a 20-minute relax break. So this poor kid was like a crazy busy kid, but his parents said he could have 20 minutes to relax when he got home from school. So 20 minutes to play on his iPad, 20 minutes to play with his toys, read a book. And one thing that him and I really liked to do together was draw comic books. So sometimes we'd sit down and like make comic books together. I can put like a picture of those in there. It was kind of just 20 minutes of time to himself for him to like decompress after school. And then after that, we do his school assignments first because, you know, those are usually due the next day and whatnot, and just wanted to make sure they were done and out of the way. And then we do, he used to have computer lessons with this program called CTY, where he'd do things like computer programming, or he had like an engineering class, he had a biology class, he had math lessons. And yeah, he'd usually have to choose 2 lessons from that website, about 20 minutes each, to do every day. And then he'd have a 10-minute break after that. And usually he'd have a snack and we'd just hang out and eat a snack and talk. Or he'd play on his iPad sometimes if I let him. And then after his break, we'd do English practice. And so for English practice, that was pretty much anything that I prepared. So a lot of times I would make like grammar worksheets for him, or we really got into practicing cursive because he was pretty proficient in his English abilities, like reading and writing as well as speaking. And I actually happen to usually write in cursive, so he'd ask me if I could teach him. So we really did a lot of cursive work, as well as sometimes it would be like if he had a long day, sometimes his English practice would be like watching an English show so that he could like practice listening to native people just speaking. Or sometimes it would be playing like a game together, or sometimes I would read a book to him and then he would listen, and then when I finished reading I'd like ask him questions about like the book we read and make sure he was paying attention and like actually listening. And then after that he'd get another 10-minute break, and that would be like more just 10 minutes to himself. And then every day he had to do this pretty much all these things every day. But even on the weekends, he had to do Chinese and English reading every day. So he'd do 30 minutes of Chinese reading and then 30 minutes of English reading. And yeah, sometimes it was hard to get him to do the Chinese reading because he thought English reading was easier. So he often would like try to get me like to get him out of doing Chinese reading by telling his parents that like he'd done a lot of work that day or something. But I always thought that was interesting because I was like, isn't Chinese your first language? And he's like, yeah, but there's so many more characters. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's true. And English, the books that he were reading like at his age level were pretty simple. So, and then he would be done, and usually we'd finish around 9 p.m. because that's when he would go to bed. But sometimes if we didn't get all of his schoolwork done, like we could be up till 10. One night we were up till midnight because he had a project that he hadn't told me about until like the day before it was due. So that was fun doing that together. And then sometimes we'd finish early, and if we'd finish early, we would just like hang out, play, go downstairs and play in the gardens, things like that. And then some point throughout the schedule, we would be called to have dinner. So dinner was just usually about 20 minutes. So it really just kind of depended. And it wasn't like super strict. Like the schedule was more of a guideline, and then we just kind of use it to like keep on track if we started getting off track. And then after Ethan went to bed, so Ethan would go to bed around like 9:30, and then it would be like my free time again. So usually after he went to bed, I'd have like 9:30 to 11 to myself, because 11 o'clock was like my curfew, so like when I needed to be home by. So usually I would do homework if I hadn't finished like all my homework for that day, or I would go and meet a friend that lived downstairs, and her and I would like take walks together. Sometimes we'd go like to have a late night snack together from like a convenience store, or go to Coco Park and like have fruit tea, which I really love. Like I've mentioned it before, but fruit tea and a balsa on like a hot summer's night, it's like, it's perfect. It's really perfect. So yeah, her and I would go do that. And then after about like, usually we were out until 11 because she was also an AuPair, and she just happened to be like living with my host family's family. So the cousin of my boy was the boy that she was taking care of, and we lived in the same apartment building, so she lived like a few floors above us. So her and I would go for like evening walks pretty much every night because it was so hot in the middle of the day that like sometimes you just didn't even want to go for a walk. So it was kind of a nice way to like get out and just spend time together. And just enjoy the night because the city was beautiful and there was always these light shows. But one thing that's really interesting about Shenzhen, and I don't know if it's everywhere like they do this in China, but they also have like a lights curfew. So I think it was 11 p.m. they'd turn off all the like big lights in the city, which I thought was cool because not only does it save power, but their reasoning was so that children can like focus on school and like get a good night's sleep too without there being too much light pollution. And I thought that was kind of creative and like a good idea. So we'd usually walk around and see the lights, get something to eat, and that was pretty normal. And then I'd come home, and from 11 to 1 a.m. I'd just like get ready for bed. Sometimes I'd watch Netflix, sometimes I'd call with my family back home because they were usually awake by then. And it was kind of more like my free time. If I still had schoolwork to do, then I'd finish that, and that was, yeah. Well, thank you guys for watching this video. That was my daily routine as an au pair. So if you guys are interested in this, I can go ahead and make my daily routine on like the weekends because it was definitely different from weekday to weekends. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment, and I'll see you next video. Bye!